I was 43 the year everything went sideways, but if I'm being honest, the real story started long before that. Maybe back when I was a kid, standing beside my old man behind a shed that leaned more than it stood, watching him replace a cracked generator hose with nothing but a crescent wrench and stubborn confidence. He told me, "Ryan, land doesn't stay yours just because your name's on paper. It stays yours because you know how to keep it alive." I didn't understand it then, but I sure do now. Because this land, the same 15-acre stretch, just outside Red Willow, Kansas, where my family lived for 3 generations, became the battlefield I never asked for. For most of my adult life, it was just me, my dog Scout, and the wind rolling through open prairie. The house wasn't fancy, 1970s ranch style, 1-porch swing, tin roof that sang in thunderstorms. But it was mine in the kind of way you feel in your ribs. I'd rebuilt half the porch after a tornado clipped us in 2018, installed my off-grid solar rig by hand, and dug a well deep enough to keep the city from sticking their regulations where the sun doesn't shine. Folks in town called me stubborn. I called it peace. That peace ended the day the Crescent Ridge Community Association showed up, the HOA for a new development built so close to my west boundary, I swear their mailboxes cast shadows on my pasture. First came the glossy flyers about shared neighborhood vision. Then came a letter tucked into a pristine envelope with gold initials, CRCA. They wanted to buy my land, said they needed continuity for future development, and would offer a competitive appraised value. I didn't bother finishing it, tossed it in the burn barrel behind the workshop. 2 weeks later, they sent another one with a number printed in neon yellow, $640,000. I laughed so hard, Scout started barking like I was under attack. Anyone who grew up on land like mine knows you can't slap a price tag on history, on sweat, on knowing exactly which oak tree bends south in summer because your grandfather carved his initials into it in 1967. And then, she arrived. Melissa Hardin, president of CRCA. Dark blue blazer, sunglasses so reflective I could see my own irritated face staring back at me. She pulled up to my gate in a spotless SUV and stepped out like she thought the gravel should move out of her way. "Mr. Booker," she said with this buttered-up smile that didn't reach her eyes, "we'd love for you to consider our offer. Crescent Ridge is growing fast, and your acreage would be invaluable to our community vision." I pointed toward the open field behind me. "This is my vision," I said. Her smile flickered, then snapped back on. "Well, keep my card," she insisted, placing it on my fence post like she was claiming the land for a foreign empire. For a while I thought that was the end of it, just another HOA with more confidence than sense. But then I noticed a small sedan parked near their boundary for 3 hours straight. The day after, 2 guys in neon vests surveying my fence line, whispering every time I looked at them. Something in the air felt wrong, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the sky goes strangely still. Then one morning, I woke to the low growl of diesel engines. Too close, too. Intentional. At first I thought someone was lost, but when I stepped outside, boots half on, Scout growling low, I saw it, a dozer, 2 backhoes, and a dump truck lined up like they were staging an excavation for a highway. Dust rolling, metal, flashing, men moving in tight formation. And right in the middle, wearing a reflective vest over her blazer like she thought it made her look official, was Melissa. I shouted over the roar, "What the hell is all this?" Melissa walked up to the boundary like this was a planned meeting she forgot to tell me about. "Routine soil reinforcement," she said, "purely on our side of the property line." She said it the way someone lies when they know they're daring you to prove it. Because behind her I watched those machines carving out a trench, a deep, ugly gouge in the ground, running parallel to my fence at first, then creeping inch by inch in a loop. "You're planning to go all this way around?" I asked. Melissa smiled wider. "Well, when you put it that way, yes." Something about her voice made the back of my neck tighten. "And you're not even going to ask permission?" She shrugged. "According to our records, this is CRCA jurisdiction. Perhaps your outdated maps misled you." Outdated. I nearly laughed. My father's survey had been verified twice, the markers embedded in concrete. There was nothing outdated about it. I called the sheriff. Deputy Morris drove out, walked the perimeter, took some notes, and said the one sentence you never want to hear when you're standing next to a giant trench being dug on your land. We. Don't make land determinations. That's zoning. Melissa hovered behind him with a laminated map that looked like a kid drew the borders using a marker. Deputy Morris told her not to cross into my home lot for now. For now. I hated those words more than the trench itself. By the second day, they'd closed every exit but one. By the third, that one was blocked by a dump truck idling like a guard dog. Deliveries stopped. Trash company called saying they couldn't reach my bins. Mail got rerouted to a drop box 5 miles out. I was officially landlocked. Trapped on my own damn property. But here's the thing Melissa didn't know. 4 years earlier, after a break-in attempt, I'd installed a set of off-grid security cameras. Not the big obvious kind. No. Mine were hidden in fence posts, inside a birdhouse, even inside a carved wooden owl I'd bought at a fair. Solar-powered, motion-triggered, and synced to an encrypted cloud server buried behind layers of redundant storage. I'd forgotten half of where I put them, until I checked. The footage was a gold mine. One clip showed a backhoe clearly crossing the boundary, the original marker right there in frame. Another showed 2 CRCA workers dragging new survey flags onto my land, laughing about how the old guy will cave any day now. And then, the clip that stopped me cold. Melissa herself pointing toward my well pump and saying, "Make sure the trench gets close enough to make his life inconvenient. He doesn't last long without water." Her voice was casual, like she was discussing brunch reservations. I didn't shout. I didn't break anything. I just sat there in my workshop, Scout snoring beside me, watching as something colder than anger settled in my chest. And that's when I decided. If they wanted a fight, they'd get one, just not the kind Melissa was prepared for. I posted 3 clips online. Nothing dramatic, just the truth. Within an hour, the local Facebook group exploded. Isn't that Walker's land? This looks illegal. Why is the HOA digging a moat? Someone tagged the local paper. Someone else tagged a news station. I wasn't expecting it to spread, but it did. Fast, like prairie fire. And when the HOA sent me a cease and desist letter, accusing me of defamation, all I replied was, "See you in court." The attention didn't slow the HOA down. If anything, it made them bolder. The next morning, 3 gravel trucks rumbled up before sunrise, dumping their loads right into the trench near my only possible exit. One of the workers spread the gravel into what looked like a makeshift roadway, except it cut across the very corner of my boundary I'd measured 100 times. I walked over and told him, "You're trespassing." He tapped a laminated badge on his vest that said, Crescent, Bridge Infrastructure Division, something I'm pretty sure they printed off a home office printer, and muttered, "Not your land, sir." I pointed to the original survey pin set in concrete and said, "Smile, you're on about 8 cameras right now." He left in a hurry, but the gravel stayed. Then came the next move. They fenced off access to my well with bright orange mesh and plastic stakes that wobbled in the breeze. A sign flapped against the posts. Safety zone, under community review. I called the county water board. They told me nothing had been approved. Called the health department. Same answer. Called my lawyer, Lynn Parker, and she said in that calm voice she uses when she's about to dismantle someone in court, "Ryan, that's interference with essential infrastructure. We'll file an injunction first thing in the morning." Meanwhile, rumors in Crescent Ridge started swirling like dust devils. A neighbor I barely knew, a guy named Marshall with nervous eyes and a habit of apologizing for things he didn't do, sent me a message saying the HOA was claiming I was squatting on common land. Another post on their community page painted me as some unstable hermit ignoring lawful requests. Some folks defended me, saying they grew up here and knew my land wasn't part of Crescent Ridge. Others just asked why anyone needed to dig a trench around a private property like it. Was medieval warfare. That night, the local news aired a short segment. Nothing huge, but enough to get people talking. They zoomed in on the trench with dramatic lighting and slow music. I nearly spit out my coffee laughing. But it worked. The pressure was building, and Melissa didn't like pressure. Because at 2:41 a.m. the next night, Scout woke me with a low growl, the kind he only uses when a raccoon is bold or a human is stupid. I peeked out the window and saw flashlights bobbing near the trench. 2 men in CRCA jackets unloading concrete blocks from a truck. And standing off to the side, arms crossed, jacket zipped to her chin, Melissa. No blazer, no airs, just a cold impatience in her posture like she wanted this done before dawn. I slipped out the side door, phone in hand, hitting record before my boots even hit the dirt. When the flash from my camera lit them up, one guy froze mid-lift like he'd been caught stealing cookies. Melissa didn't speak, didn't move, just watched them drop cinder blocks into the trench, each one landing with that dull thud you feel in your spine. I uploaded that video right after they left. It went viral within hours. By then I wasn't sleeping much. Anger has a way of keeping you awake without caffeine. The next night, around the same cursed hour, the truck came back. But this time I didn't stay inside. I walked out calmly, my legally owned rifle slung over my shoulder. Not raised, not pointed, just present. Enough to remind them this was my land, not their sandbox. "Evening," I said. The men hesitated. One set the block down so gently it looked like he was lowering a baby. Melissa stepped forward, voice sharp. "This is outrageous, Mr. Walker. You can't threaten people with a weapon." I shook my head. "I'm threatening no one. I'm protecting my home. You've dug a trench around me, blocked my well, and now you're sneaking around at night dropping concrete in my only exit. And you're doing it on my property." One of the workers muttered, "I'm done," and climbed into the truck. Melissa glared at him like she was memorizing his sins. Then she turned that glare on me. "You will regret this," she hissed. I hit record. "No," I told her, "I won't." The deputies arrived faster this time. Not Morris, the one who showed up wore a wedding ring and the kind of look you get when you've seen too many late-night calls go sideways. I walked him through the footage. Front camera, side camera, overhead drone I'd installed last summer for fun, and each clip made his jaw tighten. When the last one played, he rubbed his forehead and said, "All right, this changes everything." Next morning, Lynn filed for an emergency injunction. And for once, the judge didn't drag his feet. Judge Stanley, a grumpy old veteran with zero tolerance for nonsense, granted a temporary halt on all CRCA activity involving my land. But Melissa didn't get the chance to enjoy her small delay, because the real reckoning came a few days later at the hearing. That courthouse smelled like burnt coffee and aging carpet. Typical small-town justice. But for me, sitting there across from Melissa and her 2 lawyers in matching Bluetooth headsets, it felt like the Super Bowl. Melissa wore a charcoal gray blazer that probably cost more than my truck's transmission rebuild. Her lawyers jumped in first, talking about miscommunication, boundary ambiguity, and unfortunate misinterpretations. They claimed the trench was for drainage, claimed the block dump was rogue contractors, claimed my videos were selectively edited to mislead the public. Then Lynn stood up, cool, quiet, surgical. She laid out everything, the original survey maps, the county-verified pins, the timeline, the drone footage, the audio of Melissa ordering the trench toward my well, the budget misuse documents showing, thousands spent without board approval, and then, her killing blow, the forged permits. One signature belonged to a county official who'd passed away 2 years earlier. Judge Stanley stared at Melissa like he was trying to figure out what brand of stupidity she'd been drinking. Then he sighed and said, "I'm issuing an immediate cease and desist on all Crescent Ridge activity involving Mr. Walker's property. The trench will be filled within 7 days. Access to the well restored, and a criminal investigation will follow." I didn't smile, but I could feel Melissa shrinking in her chair. Over the next week, 3 CRCA board members resigned. The sheriff's office raided their little beige HOA building. Turns out Melissa had been funneling HOA funds into private projects, Contractors, landscaping, even a home spa installation. They froze the HOA's accounts and seized her laptop. And then the headline dropped, Melissa Hardin, arrested on charges of fraud, forgery, conspiracy to intimidate, and misuse of community funds. I stood on my porch the morning county crews, came to fill the trench. Scout leaned against my leg as the machine smoothed the earth, undoing weeks of spite in a matter of hours. The air felt lighter, the land wider, as if it had been holding its breath. A few Crescent Ridge residents drove by slowly, some waved, some didn't, that was fine. I wasn't looking for gratitude. 2 weeks later, the court awarded damages, enough for me to rebuild the fence, repave the driveway, and finally install the storm shelter I'd been putting off. I built a 10-foot cedar fence along the west side and hung a small metal sign. Nothing fancy, just 3 words stamped in bold black letters. Trench Line 2025. A reminder. A warning. A promise. And sometimes on quiet evenings I sit on that porch with Scout at my feet, watching the sun fall across my land, thinking about how close I came to losing everything to a group of people who forgot that power doesn't make you right. It just makes you loud until someone louder stands up. But I also wonder, what would have happened if I didn't have those cameras? If I didn't post the truth? If the internet didn't care that week? It makes you think how fragile justice can be in small places where people whisper before they shout. So tell me, what do you think? Was I right to stand my ground? Should HOAs have this much power? And what would you have done if a trench suddenly appeared around your home? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear every side of it.